Okay, perfect. So we're gonna start. I know that there are people that are gonna join. There are already people connected online. So hi everyone, welcome to this session. Today is with us Joseph Kilty. Did I pronounce it correct?
Oh, Kelty, but
Kelty.
pretty much.
Our presenter today is Joseph Kelty, and Joseph uses they, them pronouns. Professionally, they are a registered nurse since 2017, who currently works at public health office called Healthy Sexuality and Harm Reduction, Street Connections in the Exchange. As a nursing student, Joseph co-founded a harm reduction organization called Project Safe Audience in 2016 that targets the race festival community. They advocate for progressive social change within the healthcare system in our community. Joseph is an extroverted, curious person who loves socializing with friends and family, having in-depth conversation with people, being out in nature, and playing video games. So thanks, Joseph, for being here. So as always, we are gonna pass the pre-test, and online people, please answer the pre-test. And then we start with the presentation. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you. You got it? Yeah. Take in mind we're going right.
Waiting. Participant one.
Yeah. Did I complete?
Marley is going, so I'm just gonna share the link the rest of it.
Okay. So Joseph, all yours.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here today. Yeah, like we're going to talk about harm reduction, specifically focused on substance use and sexually transmitted and blood-borne infections. Again, my name is Joseph Kelty. I do use they, them pronouns, so we're just going to jump right into it. I would like to start though with a land acknowledgement and action statement. So welcome, come on in, have a seat. Thank you for coming. So we're gathered here on Treaty 1 territory on the original land of the Ojibwe, Oji Cree, Dene, Dakota, and Anishinaabe people. We're also gathered on the homeland of the Métis Nation. So that's cool that I've acknowledged this land acknowledgement, but what am I going to do about that? So, you know, I acknowledge the atrocities that were forcibly committed against the original people of these lands. So I work to provide a safer space and try to build back trust in every single client interaction that I am a part of as a nurse. And I'm also always advocating for justice and system change within healthcare, because many of my clients have very good reasons not to trust the healthcare system. And I'm trying to change that every day with every client interaction. So who am I professionally? Well, like was alluded to in the beginning, I did co-found Project Safe Audience as a nursing student in 2016. So this is a harm reduction initiative where we went to raves and festivals around Winnipeg and Manitoba, and we would basically set up a booth, and we would hand out free condoms, free lube, free earplugs. We had safer drug information, safer sex information. We got drug checking services, and we also had like a chill zone safe space, so people could come over to us and hang out, ask questions. If they're overstimulated, or if they've been harassed, or if they're tripping too hard, they can hang out with us and just chill. Because we also had like psychedelic crisis intervention and psychedelic wraparound care. So that started back in 2016, just two of us, very basic booth, and it just kept growing. People were just like, how can I get involved? Can I volunteer? So now we're actually an official like nonprofit organization. We've got 10 people on our board, and it's festival season, it's summer. So, but we run all year round because there's, you know, one night events all year round. So that's a little bit of that kind of harm reduction stream. But I did graduate as a registered nurse in 2017. And so for 2 years, I worked at Seven Oaks Emergency Department when it was still an emergency department. That I learned a lot. It was very tough, but I did learn a lot. And eventually I had to move on. So I became a public health nurse at Healthy Sexuality and Harm Reduction / Street Connections. So this is a public health office where we're focused on chlamydia, gonorrhea, hepatitis C, syphilis, and HIV. We do case and contact work. But we also like do outreach, and we go to people's homes. We have the Street Connections van where we try to meet people where they're at. So it's this hybrid program of like public health, but then this front-facing Street Connections office where people can come in, get harm reduction supplies. They can talk to a nurse, get walk-in testing. There's a very low barrier. You just need your first name, last name, date of birth. That is it. There's usually no wait. And so we try to, again, be accommodating, be flexible, and meet people where they're at. So that is a little bit of who I am professionally. This is the only picture you're going to see all day. So enjoy your volunteer. This was at Bring Your Love in 2022. It is a regional festival in Manitoba. There's like 20 volunteers in that picture or so, and it's really good. As you can see, it's a very colorful group of people in like, you know, we've got some BIPOC people, like Black, Indigenous people of color. It's also extremely queer. We kind of make the joke that we need a token straight person. So yeah, anyway, so that's us when we're having fun. It's totally volunteer. None of us make a cent. Any donations that come in just goes back to PSA so that we can just continue doing it year after year. So that's been about, I guess we're on 7 years now, and I never really expected it like to take off like it did. So these are some things that we're going to discuss. I would like to talk about the populations that I work with, the philosophy of harm reduction, general principles of harm reduction, because I'm not going to give you this is harm reduction, this is the definition, this is what it is. We're going to talk about how it can be applied, the philosophy behind it. A little bit about HIV, syphilis, and hepatitis C. We're going to talk about some terminology that like my clients use when it comes to harm reduction and substance use. And then that's going to be mostly the first half. And then we're going to have this hands-on harm reduction supply demonstration. Everybody in this room has two bags. There's an open one with safer smoking and safer sex supplies. And then the curled up one is safer injection supplies. So we're going to go through all that as well. And if we have time, there's so much more we could talk about. This, I could literally talk forever. But like is it a meth crisis? And we could talk about the toxic drug supply. And there's many other things in the last slide that if anybody's curious and wants to talk about, we can definitely touch on. So, okay, the terminology that I use and my coworkers use is structurally disadvantaged. So if we're talking about people, the populations that we work with are what we call structurally disadvantaged. And that's because it puts more onus and emphasis on like the actual societal systems that and our environments that we live and work in. So it could be a person experiencing homelessness, a person who uses intravenous substances, a person who engages in sex work. It could be people who have a history of incarceration or have experienced profound trauma in their life. People who have like mental health issues or, people who have disabilities, people who have suffered the awful effects of colonization, and 2S LGBTQIA+, which is two-spirited, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, and asexual/agender plus, because I'm a non-binary person myself, and NB's not even on there. So I guess it kind of fits under the transgender umbrella, but it's kind of its own thing. So we put a plus. And I do choose to use this acronym because it is the acronym that the Missing, Murdered, Indigenous Women and Girls and 2S LGBTQIA+ use. It is kind of the longest, most inclusive one. So I think that's pretty important. Now, the thing is, one person, one of my clients, one of the people I work with, would have many of these. Like, it's all the intersections that really matter. Like it could be, somebody who they have profound trauma in their life. It's childhood trauma. And so they're using intravenous substances to kill the pain. And they're also experiencing homelessness. So that's just like three intersections, and it does get much more complex than that. And so it's my job to help people in the ways that they need and that they want, and have conversations with them so that I could actually provide the care that they deserve and need. So that's why I like to say like structurally disadvantaged. It does put more like emphasis on the systems, and we need to change the systems instead of just focusing on maybe individual level behavior. So, philosophy of harm reduction. There's two slides of this. It can be very broadly applied. It's not just sex and drugs. Really, if you think about the two terms there, like yes, that's where harm reduction originated from, sex and drugs, and we'll get into that. But it could be anything. Like if you're driving in a car, any sort of safety mechanism, seatbelt is kind of harm reduction. If you decide to eat a big full meal before drinking a whole bunch of alcohol, that's kind of harm reduction because it's going to absorb into your blood slower. If you decide, I want you to think like harm reduction could be applied anywhere, anything. It's not just sex and drugs. But it really did start with the people, and the people, I mean the peers. So my understanding, a very, very, very brief history of how it started is in the 1980s, there were people dying of HIV and AIDS, and there were people dying of heroin. So it was the people who were like, we need to hand out sterile new needles so that we don't spread HIV as much. And we need to carry Narcan kits because our friends and family are passing away. And so that's how it started. It started with the people in the community, and then healthcare was like, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe we should treat people with dignity and respect and listen to what they want. And maybe we should be accommodating, a bit flexible, and not just say, don't do drugs, just say no. So it does start with the people. Now, I consider myself a peer of the rave and the festival community. I don't consider myself a peer of the people that I work with at Street Connections. So I do have a home that I can go home to and sleep and eat, and I know where I'm going to get that. I don't use intravenous substances. I have experienced some trauma in my life. Trauma is very common, but I wouldn't say that I've experienced like debilitating trauma. So I don't consider myself to be a peer. of the people that I work with at Street Connections. So like that, I think, needs to be remembered. Like I am paid pretty well to be a public health nurse. Not all my clients have that high of an income. So that's just kind of, yeah, for sure. Question.
What's the level? Debilitation.
Oh, like the question is like what debilitating just means to like it's crushing, like it's so strong and severe that I have a very difficult time getting through the day.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good question. So I'm gonna sip water. So it's all about building trust and giving respect and dignity. It is client-centered. I acknowledge that clients are experts in their own lives. And again, we need that peer input, because if I'm not listening and I'm just doing things at people, what good is it? It's not what they want. It's not what they need. It's not sustainable. They're not going to come back. So I have these open and honest conversations with my clients, and like they are totally non-judgmental. I'm just listening. I really actively listen, and I try to take it in and ask more questions and provide that space, hold that space, so that, because then they'll just open up and they'll tell me their lives, their whole lives. And I'm very honored when I have these conversations, when I sit with my clients. And then really rapport is built, trust is built, and I know what they need or want, and we can work towards that together side by side. There is no expectation that they're going to stop using substances. So they could, for example, maybe they could use less if they want to. Maybe they could smoke their substances instead of injecting. That's up to them though. I'm not telling them one way or the other. So with harm reduction, we do acknowledge these risky behaviors. We always say safer, nothing's 100% safe. You know, like they're like say injecting substances or having many sexual partners and not using any barrier protection, that there are inherent risks. But we also acknowledge the benefits. We ask, you know, what are they getting from these substances or behaviors? Like there is a positive benefit, whether that be if I use some methamphetamine, now I have energy for 10 hours. I'm not hungry. I feel powerful and social. If I use some down, then like my physical and mental and emotional pain is less for right now, and I can help like get through the day. Sometimes it is just pure recreation, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I like to ask my clients when it's appropriate, like, what is your relationship to the substance? Are you still getting out of it what you originally were hoping for? And so then they can reflect, and then they'll be, you know what, I'm not really anymore. And I'd be like, well, like, do you want other kind of addiction services? Like, because I'm the harm reduction person, I can help you get there. But like, I just think it's important to ask that question of like, what is your relationship to it? And sometimes go, yeah, no, it's fine. I'm getting like, it helps me do what I need to do. And I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. So I've kind of said this. Oh, sorry, that's a question.
A question from Lisa. What about first-time users? Since you are not a peer, but what can they take away from a visit from you?
Okay, so like, what about first-time users, and like, what can they take away from a visit from me? So that's a very good question, a good point. Like, even though I don't consider myself to be a peer, and I don't inject myself, I have a large wealth of knowledge when it comes to drugs, illegal drugs, sex, because not only do I have like the formal education training, but I also have like the harm reduction background. And I also, I have talked to so many clients over the years, and I have learned so much. It's incredible. For example, like there was this guy, very young man. I was in the Street Connections van, I met him. He asked, can I get some harm reduction? Basically, he was like, can I get some harm reduction supplies? I'm like, yeah, for sure. He's like, also, can you check out this injection site for me, please? I'm like, yeah, come on the back of the van. Let's take a look. So then he was just over 18 years of age. and he started injecting meth. He did not know that you could smoke it. He had not smoked any weed. And his peers and his friends were like, hey, let's do this together. And he was like, okay. So he was asking me like, how far does the needle have to go in? And I'm like, oh, just a little bit. Like you can, so I do the best practice injection tips, like bevel up, flagging, rotating your sights, getting good with both hands, starting distally, working up, all that kind of thing. Using the tourniquet, taking it off before you actually inject. Because he didn't realize, like, you don't have to put the needle in the whole way. You just need to put it in a little bit. You'll feel that pop, you're in the vein. You can flag it, which you pull it back a little bit so that, okay, there's some blood, I'm probably in the vein. And then you just inject it slowly from there. When he was taught by his peers and his social circle that it's got to go the whole way in. And I'm like, actually, you're probably going to just like pierce right through the vein. So that's, a very good point. What can they learn from me? I try to absorb everything that the clients tell me, and I try to pass that on as best I can. At the same time, I also give this benefit of like providing education around the transmission of hepatitis C and HIV through the needles, like because we don't recommend sharing needles, but also the cookers, which are like little spoons, any waters or communal drug solution, or any alcohol swabs that could have blood on it. Any of these things could, if shared, potentially transmit hepatitis C or HIV. So, I think that there's some benefits to having a chit chat with me. But I mean, that's up to the person to decide. That's not up to me. So yeah, like I've said a couple times, meeting people where they're at, accommodating them, being flexible. At Street Connections, there's no appointments. No appointments. You just show up. Like there's usually no wait. And if somebody comes in and like, hey, well, I need to see Joe the nurse, and I'm like, or like the nurse on call. I'm like, okay, so I'll get that call from the outreach worker at the front. Like, then I'll go in and introduce myself. And because maybe I have to finish something up for like, it's gonna take like 5 minutes. What I will do, I will go up to the front and say, hey, my name is Joe. I'm a nurse. I'll see you. I'll be right back in like 5 minutes. I just gotta finish up what I was documenting. I'll be right with you. And I think that's very important because some of my coworkers, and I'm trying to change this, will just take that 5 minutes and finish up what they were doing. And in that 5 minutes of not being acknowledged, of not being recognized, of not realizing that somebody cares about you, they leave. Mm-hmm. And so I really try to be flexible and just meet them where they're at. Yes.
Do you, like, Street Connections, do they put a radar that way refer you guys? Because my son's on intravenous drug user.
Okay.
When that considers like protein, we tried many times to get him on. Doing the whole thing, like, because he's been in the system since he was a small kid.
Okay.
And then now his retesting is like backlash and everything like that, so he's like retaliating.
Okay.
And it's just like, my son's seen him, my other son goes to Ray because he goes there for the free food and all that stuff, because there's good food. But, for him to go there and see his brother there, he says, but, since my son doesn't use, but he just goes there for the food and just he's trying to look for work and trying to do other things, that's what helps out that way.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of wondering, like, because my son gets to go there because he wants to shower and all that, they really refer you to you guys?
So the question is kind of like how does Street Connections and resource assistance for youth like work together?
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of, we don't have like a direct partnership where we refer one to the other. What we will do, it's more fluid than that. So if I'm looking for a client and I found out that they're connected to Ray, I'll call them up, I'll talk with our outreach team, and maybe we could work together to find this person, or if they find them, they could get them to call me. And Ray can also get like their harm reduction supplies from us. Resource assistance for youth, like they've also got a nurse practitioner there, and so we connect with her. Pardon? So
they have all the stuff you guys would do, or does everybody just go to Street Connections with you?
like everybody, throughout Street Connections, we have a pretty narrow focus. So Ray is they're probably more holistic than us, where they've got the housing and they've got the food and they've got the clothing and that kind of thing. And we're really focused on the harm reduction aspect of like safer injection, safer smoking, safer sex supplies. And then like the sexually transmitted infections, case and contact work. So it's kind of, to be honest, they do a more holistic approach than we do. What we see ourselves as like, we'll deal with the STIs and the harm reduction. And then if a client needs more, like because many of them do, we can connect them there. So we will refer them to Ray, maybe for example, or like give them a taxi slip to go there or to access downtown, you know, whatever they need, we'll try to get them there and connected to the resources that are beyond us. Yeah, because we are very focused on the sexually transmitted infections. And to be honest, it is a little bit of an issue. I wish that we had the capacity to be more holistic. Yeah. So yeah, it's all about, oh, hello.
Another question from Lisa. She said, last year I was catching a bus downtown and two ladies was using needles. I watched her and black blood was inside the needle. How bad shape do you think she was in?
So the question is, somebody was injecting in a bus shelter, and how bad of shape they were in. I don't really like to say that. I'm not going to say that she was in bad shape. I don't know anything about this person. I'd have to have a conversation with them. Some people do blood shots, where you have blood in the needle and you kind of inject it again, maybe get another high. If somebody is in that situation they don't want to be, that sucks. You know, I can't say how bad she is. That's a judgment, and I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna talk to her and listen to her and do whatever she wants to do, and then that's about it. Yes.
Like when someone's like hydrated and eating healthy, their blood is like a normal light red. And then when they're like not taking care of themselves, like dehydrated, not eating and all that, does that make their blood black?
So the question is like, if somebody's eating well and drinking and sleeping, like their blood is lighter red, and if they're not doing those kind of healthy things, then like is their blood turn like a darker black color? To be honest, I'd say probably not. Like it might be a little darker because of the dehydration, but like any blood from a vein is going to be kind of crimson red either way. You can't really tell someone's health based upon the color of their blood. And then blood from an artery would be a brighter red because it's got more oxygen in it. Yeah, so I think the biggest thing there would be like if somebody, you know, is not drinking fluids and that stuff, they might be a harder poke because their veins will get smaller, but the color won't change too much. Yeah, no problem. So again, I think this point here, this fifth point, harms are not evenly distributed across populations is very important. And that is the social determinants of health. So somebody who met that list of structurally disadvantaged people that I work with, if you are experiencing homelessness and you're going to do your injection in the back of an alley, you're actually very much at risk of being jumped and your stuff being stolen. Or you don't have a bed to go and sleep it off and some food. So somebody who is like maybe a healthcare worker and they use methamphetamine, they're going to go home, they're going to sleep, they're going to eat, they're going to talk with their friends and family, they're not going to be stressed out. They literally will not have the same harms. It will be less. Anybody who like is experiencing the social determinants of health working against them, their harms are greater. We have to have that in our minds when working with all of our clients. Like if I injected substances, I would probably be fine for if I went home and just had the space and time to let it run its course. But not everybody has that luxury. You know, might be in a home that has a lot of people in a very small space, very stimulating and not necessarily safe. They're going to have more harms, even if you're using the same amount of substances. And then For me and any healthcare workers, I do need to acknowledge these preconceived notions and biases and stereotypes within myself, because they are programmed into you. They're programmed into you from the media, from your family, from your friends. So I have to like, recognize these and always come in with no judgment and listening with a clean slate kind of thing. No worries. Okay, so that was 2 slides, a little bit about the philosophy of harm reduction. I hope between those 2 slides that you have a better understanding of like what it is and how it can be applied in many, many day-to-day interactions. Now, these general harm reduction principles, they are more focused on substance use. I am kind of focusing on that today. So don't share any needles, cookers, water, or drug solution. Sometimes people will like communally pool all of their substances, their powders into one kind of solution in a bottle, and everybody takes from it. And then, maybe you inject into yourself, and then you take a little bit more. Well, now that whole communal thing is contaminated, like it could potentially have a virus in it. So we say, don't share the needles, don't share the cookers, don't share the water, drug solution, or alcohol swabs. People will clean it after the fact. If you're sharing that, it's still got some alcohol on it, but it's got your blood on it, there is a potential risk there. So part of this also though is like, every year we give out about 2.5 million needles. And that is so much cheaper, it's like 9 cents or 12 cents a needle, than paying for somebody's HIV medication for the rest of their life. So there's an economic reason for this as well. If you prevent the transmission like a few times, you pay for the whole program. But also if somebody comes up and if they want 2,000 needles, I'm going to give them 2,000 needles, because what they do, they're going to go to wherever they hang out and they're going to give these 2,000 needles to a dozen of their friends. So that informal supply distribution is part of the idea. We cannot be everywhere all the time. So we just have to give them as much as they want. That is the best practice. That's what we need to do. Yep.
I know 9 Circle does, like if you have like a bin of needles or something, you take it in and they give you like a gift or whatever, like,
Okay.
Do you do that?
So the question is like 9 Circle, if you bring back used needles, like they'll give you a gift for that, for returning it. And does Street Connections do the same? Unfortunately, no. We will just take them off your hands and you can have as many as you want.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point before me, maybe we did, but for the last at least 3.5 years, no, sorry. Yeah. So start low and go slow. This is about substance use. You can always add more drugs. Like 2 in the arm is better than 1 in the grave. Like do a tester shot, because you can always add more, but once they're in your system, you can't really get rid of them. You've kind of bought the ticket. The one exception might be Narcan. However, that only works for 30 to 90 minutes. So we do really recommend just do a tester shot, see how it makes you feel, wait a little bit, add some more if you want to. Tell people where you're going to be and don't lock any doors, especially with opiates. If you like opiates, so people, toxic drug supply right now, fentanyl, carfentanil, like morphine, hydromorphone, mixed with benzodiazepines, we can get into that later. If you are overdosing on opiates or depressants, you cannot ask for help. You're laying on the ground unconscious. You might think you're high and having a great time, but you're actually not breathing. You're silent and nobody knows where you are or what's going on. So tell people where you're going to be. Ideally use with a buddy who is also hopefully mostly sober, or you could stagger your use. So somebody is a little bit sober, and don't lock any doors. That's kind of one of the worst things. If they're trying to get to you and those few minutes are precious and they've got to take the time to try to find a key or break down the door, that's not a good situation to be in. And with regards to mixing substances, when it comes, now this is kind of about drugs and alcohol is a drug, but we actually recommend people use their substances first, like down or meth or whatever it happens to be, anything at all, and then add the alcohol later. The reason for that is because alcohol will actually decrease your inhibitions, might make you a little bit more courageous. You might end up using more of a substance than you originally intended to use. So we'll say like, use your drugs, and if you still feel like it, you can drink alcohol if you want to. But we also say you should probably cut your dosages in half. Like, and that kind of goes with the starting low, go slow kind of thing. Because again, you can always add more. So testing and checking your substances. There are 3 different ways. I'm not going to get into the details. That is kind of like a whole other conversation. But there's like the dipstick test for like fentanyl, benzodiazepines, whatever. There is a liquid reagent presence test that can tell you like what is in your substance, but not really the concentration or purity of it. And then there is the fancy FTIR machine that uses lasers, light, and spectroscopy to tell you exactly what's in your substance, break it down by percentages, and it will spit you a readout of like in your pill or powder, this is actually what you have. So there are services like Sunshine House recently got the FTIR machine. Project Safe Audience, like through their MOPS, the Mobile Overdose Prevention Site. Project Safe Audience uses the liquid reagent testing because we can't afford the $40,000 to $50,000 machine. Also Street Connections, if you were to come to us, we can mail it to a place in Vancouver who will also test it using that fancy machine. So some people will buy in bulk, and because the results will take a little bit to get back to you, but it's really strongly recommended to test and check your substances, especially if it's a new batch. Because the illegal drugs, they change so rapidly that batch to batch, there can be pretty different things in there. And know your source. Oh, yep.
Is there like a thing for like a single person to do it, like various, or do we have to just go to one of you resources?
Like for the drug checking?
Yeah.
So the question is like, is there a method of,
Like the last one, like the kit you can carry on?
Right.
Or is there like a kit for them to check it for themselves, or?
the closest thing like to check it for yourself would be, you'd have to buy like the fentanyl test strips, but they're kind of expensive at like $1 a strip, which is not a ton.
They're not covered by treaty or anything?
Okay, good to know. Okay, so I'm gonna remember that. So fentanyl test strips. So that's like you use like 30 milliliters of water, you put a tiny little bit of your substance in there and you can check it. But again, it's not foolproof because in that little sample that you put in there, maybe there's no fentanyl, but in your bag of drugs, there could be a little bit of fentanyl hotspot over here. So you always have to carry an Narcan kit. You always got to utilize the harm reduction principles. Everything is safer. It's never 100% safe. Yeah, so that's a very good question. You could look into liquid reagent testing, which is another option. It's a little bit more affordable. Like you can get the bottles for like between $50 and $100, but they last multiple tests instead of just once.
Yeah, because we had an incident where me and my daughter were walking down on the street. We're just trying to come into my program, like the mother and grandmother, whatever. But one of the first people flags right on in front of us.
Oh, it is.
And then I just happen to have a knock-on like from the group here.
Yeah.
So, and then nobody had one, like everybody was not, everybody just started separating the teams that were with them.
Oh, wow.
Just left them like right on the street. So, and then people were asking like, oh, do anybody have one? And the person goes, Mom, you just came to your program, didn't know if you have one. Then I totally forgot that I had one in my bag, and then this is where I was gonna do. So we actually got to use it.
You got to use it, eh?
And it actually did really work, and then.
You just saved a life.
And the paramedics were all surprised, we were just like watching, like, how was his breathing, giving him water, and then he was sitting up, like, he jumped up right away, he was like,
So somebody called 911 though?
yeah.
Good, excellent.
So it's just like, I was just saying, like, that would have been really good if we can have one of those things, like, just to see, like, what, I don't know how to say, because, like, I'm a mother of users. And then I hear him, like, dosing all the time from other people. Like, he doesn't come around us, because he knows, like, we're not ashamed of him or anything, it's just him thinking, like, we don't want him around, so it's just kind of like, him staying away from us, if he doesn't want us to see how he is.
And that you brought up shame and like the stigma is enormous. And like a huge part of my work is destigmatization, and it is breaking down that shame so that we can have these open and honest, vulnerable conversations,
Yeah.
so that people can stay safe, so they can be with their friends and they don't feel isolated.
Yeah.
So like, good job, by the way, for thinking that
Like
you,
me and my daughter,
yeah.
we're trying to like, go more to these programs to find out, because he is a substance user, and then we're trying to figure out like how we can help him, like, we know he's not gonna get off it. But gradually, we hope to make it well, but
Yeah.
for, support from us, like, let him know that we're here, we're not gonna throw him away, like, he's not one of the ones on the street.
Yeah, well, you've got to, it sounds like you love him a lot.
Yeah.
And when he's ready, like, he'll hopefully come to you and you've got that door open and you can ask him like how he feels about his substance use or what he wants to do and work with him.
Yeah.
That's very good. And that's the harm reduction way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we're just learning more, so
okay.
kind of glad I just came to this because someone I gotta go to program, and it's like, well, what's the rush? It's like, I forgot what today was.
No, yeah.
But thank you very much.
No problem. And there's a question over here.
And you know, how, toxic it is by color?
Probably not. So methamphetamine, like the way to tell would only really be a drug check. And so that you would have to use like a liquid reagent test to tell you that it is methamphetamine and not something else. Or you could use that light and spectroscopy to tell you like, yes, this is 95% methamphetamine. And maybe, and hopefully that other 5% is not something that is toxic, like, maybe carfentanil or even just something else entirely, right? Based upon the color, no. Oh, so, and the question was, can you tell the toxicity of methamphetamine based upon the color and appearance? The answer is pretty much no. Unfortunately, many substances, they all look like white powders. They look like maybe crystals. And there's really no way to tell without like a proper drug check.
Because, I left my son a couple of years ago, he was on that. And when I found him, it was a dark, like a dark color, so that's why I thought.
I'm
Like
sorry.
pink and like purple, but.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. So the last 2 points are like, I've said this, carry your naloxone kit with you wherever you go. Always good to have one. It's an emergency thing. And the other piece is this number here, 1-888-6888 NORS 6677. That is the National Overdose Response Service. So if somebody is using on their own, but they want someone to check in on them, if they have access to a phone, they can call this number and then they'll either like stay with you on the line while you use your substance and make sure you're still talking and breathing, or they'll like call you back in 5 minutes or however long. And if you don't answer, they're going to call 911 and they're going to send an ambulance to where you are. So this is a national overdose response service. Oh, geez, we are like, well, that's okay. All right. HIV, syphilis, and Hep C. HIV is a virus. It is the virus that causes AIDS. Yes.
I remember I went to Street Connections and you were working and you helped me with the HIV rapid test
Oh, okay.
and you totally like supported me and like made me feel comfortable while I was there and yeah, I just wanted to let you know.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much. Thank you. I didn't expect that. HIV, it is a virus. It's transmitted through sexual fluids and blood. It is treatable. So it's not curable. If somebody has HIV, they do have it for the rest of their life. The good news these days is that the medicine has come so far that if you get connected to care and you take your pill every day, that virus will go to sleep in your body and it can no longer harm you and you can't transmit it to other people if you get to target not detected. However, if you stop taking your pill, it will come back in your body. So that's why we consider it's treatable, but it's not curable. Syphilis is a bacterial infection. It's transmitted through sexual fluids. That's pre-cum, cum, vaginal fluids, anal fluids. And so this is curable. You just get shots of penicillin. It's a long-acting form called bicillin, and you can be cured because syphilis starts off incredibly mild, but if it's left untreated for a few years, it can come back with a vengeance and it can be devastating. Unfortunately, rates of syphilis exploded in 2018 and they kind of kept going on. They plateaued a little bit, but they're still up there. And HIV since 2021, 2022 has also really started to explode in the same way. So there's a very big concern right now about HIV and syphilis in particular, especially because in utero, they can be passed on to babies. Another question.
25 years of HIV and I had 3 babies who are undetected.
Good, good job.
My
Yeah.
oldest is 19.
So there was and can I repeat that? Can I repeat that? Yeah, so there was a story like, participant here has had HIV for 25 years, has had 3 children that, none of which have HIV. And that's because you were connected to care, you took your medicine, you got your viral load to basically 0, and then it can't be transmitted. And that's wonderful. That's great. That is the best goal possible. And I try to help my clients achieve that as well. And currently the system with the appointments and the blood work and the x-rays and it is all very rigid, and we're working to try to soften that. So again, we can work with people instead of like forcing them to accommodate us and come to us at specific times. So it's challenging. Hepatitis C, it's a virus. It's primarily spread through blood-to-blood contact. So like needle sharing is the most common. There is a very, very rough estimate that 60 to 80% of people who use intravenous substances have hepatitis C. But again, it's curable these days. The medicine's come very, very far. If you get connected to hepatitis C care, you can take your medicine for about 2 months and you will be cured. Now, all of this can be prevented, primary prevention through harm reduction supplies, through either wearing condoms or using your own sterile needles every single time. We can prevent the spread from even starting. So that's kind of where I come in, or try to anyway. And this Winnipeg and Manitoba context of rising rates, they are going up. Unfortunately, we are not meeting the needs of our clients in the way that we should. And we need a real whole government, whole sector approach, whole healthcare system approach. And that is starting. And I hope it's not too late. I really need to like get that curve down and really, we need to get going on this.
Manitoba is the second, right?
Yeah, so for HIV rates, I think that Manitoba is the second, just behind Saskatchewan. I think we're the canaries in the gold mine. I think you're going to see very similar things across Canada in urban centers with other structurally disadvantaged populations. I think that will happen. Time will tell. So before we get to the harm reduction hands-on demonstration, possibly, a couple terms. Does anybody know what a point is?
Like, I don't know how to say.
Yeah.
It's like a 0 point.
Exactly.
0.1 or something.
Yeah. So a point is 0.1 of a gram or like 100 milligrams. It's a unit of measure. Clients will often refer to, I used a point or I used half a point. And so they're not probably taking a milligram scale and weighing it out. However, they are probably eyeballing it and they are using regularly. So they know what a point looks like. So that's a point. A doctoring, I joke that this should be called nursing. That is when somebody, yeah, exactly. When somebody like helps you out with the injection, maybe for some reason you like have a disability and can't do it your own, or you have, yeah, you're too shaky or you're a little bit nervous about the needle or whatever it is. So the person who would actually inject for you and get into your vein would be called your doctor. And so there's a very important thing to consider here because we don't discourage people who need help. They genuinely need help hitting the vein, whatever, that's fine. But there is a power imbalance now, because if I'm relying on somebody to doctor me and I want/need my hit, I have to hope that they're using a sterile needle. And I have to hope that once it's in, they're going to give it back to me. And I also have to hope that they respect me enough that they're not going to say, yeah, I'll doctor you. Sure. First, you have to do something for me. There's a lot of sexual exploitation here. There's a lot of power imbalance. So whenever someone says, oh yeah, they're my doctor, I will ask them, like, do you feel safe in that relationship? Like, how does that go for you? I have to explore that now. As a nurse, I have to make sure there's no abuse happening. So that's what doctoring is. It's somebody who injects for you. So needles, cleans, and rigs, points, sharps, that's like what They're called, however, as a healthcare professional, I will say that it is a new needle or a sterile needle. And if it's been used, it is a used needle. I do not call them cleans, and I do not call it a dirty needle, because I am not going to insinuate that my clients are dirty. So to me, they're new and sterile, and then they're used. Clients call them cleans all the time. That's totally fine. I'm not gonna be like, oh, you know, it's a new sterile needle. No, they can call it whatever they want. But I don't say clean and I don't say dirty. Stems are the straight shooter crack pipes that we can smoke crack out of. A bubble pipe it's also a pipe with a spherical, circular end on the end that's used for smoking meth. And that's because when you heat up the meth, it turns into a liquid. So then you don't want it to just like run out the end of it. And down is a substance that's usually heroin and fentanyl that makes you feel down and calm and relaxed. But it's actually just a mixture of various things. Like maybe there's heroin in there, maybe there's fentanyl in there, maybe there's carfentanil in there, maybe there's benzodiazepines that also make you feel down. But we're not talking about diazepam or lorazepam, like the ones that we're all familiar with. We're talking like research chemical benzodiazepines that were developed in the last couple of years that are extremely potent. They're active in also tiny quantities like fentanyl. And so when you're mixing depressants with depressants of different classifications, opiates and benzos, it's not 3 + 3 is 6. It's more like 3 × 3 is 9. There's this synergistic multiplicative effect, right? So those are some terms. And now I'm supposed to get into a hands-on harm reduction demonstration, but we're at 5 minutes to 7. So keep going. Okay. Okay, cool. Let's start with, so everyone's got 2 bags. There is the crumpled up is the safer injection supplies, and then the open one is the safer smoking and safer sex. So we're going to go through the injection supplies first. So this is what's called, I'll wait 1 second. People just dump them out on your table. It's all good. The closed one, yeah. Right. Sweet. So this is what a 20 bag is that Street Connections hands out. It's got 20 needles in it. They are just your standard tuberculin syringe needles. They have a very fine needle. It's easy to get into the vein. These, again, they're like one of the most important public health measures because this is primary prevention. This is like 9 cents. This is preventing the spread. If everybody used a new sterile needle all the time, rates of HIV would go down. So it comes with 20 needles. It comes with 8 waters. So this is like what you can, so you could use your, no, I'll grab it. The water is to dissolve your substance in. So you could have like, you could open up your cooker as well. Oh, by the way, this cooker here that everyone's got, that goes with your injection supplies. And so you would like put in a little bit of water in your cooker, you add a little bit of your substance, stir it around, add heat to the bottom to boil it so it all dissolves. And then you can draw it up into your syringe. So that's what the waters are for. But if you snort your drugs, you could also, this is just sterile water. After about 5 minutes, everything's pretty much absorbed and whatever's left in there is kind of just junk. If you want, you could even just use it like a neti pot and just like kind of clean it all out and run it out. So this is just sterile water. It is for injecting, could be used to clean out your nose. And then we also get 20 alcohol swabs. So the alcohol swabs are used to like clean the site before injecting. Some people use it to clean it after the injecting, but we actually don't recommend that too much because the alcohol will actually make you bleed a little bit more. So you can clean afterwards. Also, this is something that you shouldn't share either. And then it comes with 2 tourniquets, or tourniquet, however you want to pronounce it. This you could share. This is very, very low risk. Like this can just go around your bicep and it basically will just make your veins get real big and popped out. And then, then once you're like, so you've got this on your arm, you can inject your needle in there. And then really, if you have the ability, you should take off your tourniquet then. Because if you don't, if you've got your tourniquet on real tight and then you inject your whole thing, all of the drugs are going to hit you at once. Instead of like taking the tourniquet off, now blood flows back, you can inject slowly and you'll feel it slower. But some people like to rush. So they'll have it on tight, they'll inject the whole thing, take it off, and boom, all at once. But that is more dangerous. Because you don't feel it, and then it's just wham. And, you know, that's what some people are going for, but that's up to them. So this cooker here, I'm gonna open it up and you can too. It comes with a little metal spoon. They're all different colors, so you can tell which one is yours. This is all something that should not be shared. Everyone should have their own. There's red, there's blue, there's green, there's silver. So this is what you would put your substance in. Methamphetamine doesn't need to be cooked. It's water soluble, but down needs to be cooked. So to dissolve it, you need to add some heat and water. It also comes, there's a sterile filter, like a cotton filter, that you can put on the end of your needle. And that's just to filter out large particulate matter. If you're like breaking down a hydromorphone dilaudid pill, that could get rid of some of the binders and fillers. However, it won't filter out bacteria. It won't filter out viruses. And they're not super popular because you lose a little bit of your drugs. So yeah, there's that too. And then the little square thing is supposed to be like a hot plate, like so you don't like burn anything, I think. Like, but I don't know if people use that or not. There's like a couple more things related to safer injection supplies. There's two other types of cotton filters. You can get large ones, you can get small ones. And then we also hand out vitamin C. So vitamin C, we only give this out if people ask because it's only for two different drugs. It's for black tar heroin and it's for crack cocaine. Because for both of those drugs, you need a little bit of acidity to help it dissolve and break down. So you add just enough vitamin C so that it breaks down and dissolves. We do not recommend injecting the whole packet of vitamin C. There's a myth like, oh yeah, I got my vitamin C for the day. I took the whole pack and I injected it. That's actually very hard on your veins. So what you could do, you could rip it open, you could put it in some water and you could drink it. That's fine. It's just vitamin C. But this is only for black tar heroin, which is not even on the streets anymore because it's all down, which is different, and crack cocaine. And then we also give out the containers. So we give out the 1 liter sharps container, we give out the 5 liter sharps container. There are specific ways to lock them once they're full so that it can't be opened again, or at least it's a lot harder to open again. So we give these out because since we give out 2.5 million needles a year, about 1 to 2% do end up on the ground, and that's not awesome. That's maybe like 50,000 needles, and we really don't want that. So we give these out to people as many as they want so they can put this in. If people don't have a sharps container, what you can do is use anything that's sharps resistant. You could use a 2 liter plastic bottle. You could use a laundry detergent bottle because that's pretty thick plastic. Anything, you could just toss it in there. And then once it's sealed and closed, you could give it back to Street Connections. You could. If it's sealed and closed, you can also just throw it in the municipal garbage. Garbage is considered sharp. So if it's closed and locked, you can just put it in the garbage and that's fine. So.
You can bring in any container to Street Connection?
Yeah. We'll take it like if it's in a plastic bag and it's safe, it's not in a really safe container and it's open, whatever. We've got bins that we can put it in. Yeah, but.
And then I'm sure you have to have it moved.
Okay. Oh, no.
And just bring them back.
Oh, yeah, we'll take anything. Yeah. Street Connections will take any sort of, if you want to return sharps of any kind, we'll take it from you. Yeah. And then everyone can pour out the second bag. This one, I'll move over here. Okay. So this is the safer smoking and safer sex supplies. I'm going to start with the safer smoking stuff. So what we've got here is, here we go. So we've got a safer crack use kit. There are 2 pretty strong straight shooter stems, glass pipes. And so there's also 2 mouthpieces. That's what the plastic is. So the mouthpieces can go on the end, so you don't burn your lips. We don't have the funds to give an unlimited amount of these. So that's why there's 2 in a pack. So that like, you know, you can have one and your buddy can have one or your partner can have one, whatever it happens to be. So this is specifically for crack cocaine, but it could be used for if you want to smoke anything, whatever. We also give out these pushers though. Oh, you didn't get one? Yeah. Okay, sorry. So we also give out these pushers. It is literally just a chopstick. Because the way that it works. So you take your mouthpiece, you've got your pipe, you put the mouthpiece on there, you just kind of jam it on there. Then you would take your brass screens, which we also hand out, and you could fold them up and you put them in the middle, like wherever you want. And then you take your crack rock and your push stick, you put the crack in there a little bit and you push it to wherever you want. So then you can light it from the bottom and you can vaporize it and inhale it. And the brass screens will make it so there's no like flying, flaming crack hitting the back of your throat. And we also give out these screens because people were using Brillo. Brillo is a form of steel wool that is very easy, comes apart. However, it is coated in pretty like toxic chemicals that we don't really want people inhaling, and also breaks apart really easily and flaming Brillo will hit the back of your throat. Yes?
Yeah, I had a relative of mine that did Brillo.
Oh, yeah.
And then she had teeth, and then actually stuck.
Yeah.
So she accidentally did it.
Yeah, so just there's a story about flaming Brillo getting stuck in the back of someone's throat. It would be incredibly painful and actually having to go to the hospital. So we give out the screens. If people use the screens for smoking weed, that's totally fine. They can do whatever they want. But everything is to really decrease harms. Originally, these safer crack use kits were actually an engagement piece. The theory, the idea is like, if I've got cracked bloody lips and then I pass you the pipe and you've got cracked bloody lips, you could potentially theoretically spread hepatitis C or something like that, blood to blood. That doesn't happen very often. And from my understanding, that risk is quite low. But it's an engagement piece. We're like, this is the most popular thing for a very long time. Oh yeah, okay, you want this? Very popular. Now I can talk to you about harm reduction and substances and whatever you want. Cool. However, we've also got these bubble pipes now. So that's this one here with a mouthpiece as well. This has usurped the safer crack use kits. People were asking forever for the bubble pipes, and this is for smoking methamphetamine. So again, we have a different kind of mouthpiece, a little bit wider, and it can go on the end there so you don't burn your lips or anything. But like I said, it's got the spherical, circular bubble end. It's called everybody calls it a bubble. And you put your meth in there, whatever it is, whatever form, if the powder or crystal form, and you can just vaporize it by applying heat to the bottom. And then it does turn into a liquid. So the circle catches it all. And then you just inhale vapors. So this is now the most popular thing. I worked in the Street Connections van last Thursday. I saw 180 people in like 5 hours and 15 minutes and gave out 229 of these. Yeah, because again, we're limited. We can only give 2 per person. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Our partner agencies can only give 1 per person because we literally can't keep up with the demand. The manufacturer cannot produce enough of these for us. But we're hoping as well that maybe people will switch from injecting to smoking, or maybe they'll inject and then keep their high going with the smoking. You know, whatever it is reducing some sort of harms. Question?
Want to mention, that the bubble, what is it there? The bubble helps, starting slow or something like that?
Start low, go, or like,
Yeah.
yeah, start low, go slow.
Because injecting is like you said, it's like bad.
Yeah, so the comment question is like that the bubble can help somebody start low and go slow. And that is true to a certain extent. It really depends on how much that you would put in your shot and how much you would put in your bubble. Because actually like injecting and smoking both hit you in like 30 to 60 seconds. Like your lungs are so vascular with so much bloodstream in them that it also hits your blood and hits your brain very quickly. You're right, it could, but it also really just depends on how much people stuff in there, you know? Yeah. So that's kind of the safer smoking supplies that we do hand out. The last piece is safer sex supplies. So there's a few things to go through here. I'm going to start with the external condoms. Everybody's like, we give all sorts of different ones. There's flavored, there's extra large, there's latex free for any sort of latex allergies. We've got sensitive, durable, snugger fit, which I think is code for small. We've got non-lubricated, very, very plain if somebody wants it. And then we just got like the regular standard. So these are external condoms, okay? And I'm using that word specifically because we've also got these internal condoms. And now this internal condom, this is the worst branding ever. It says female condom. That's awful. And I'm gonna explain why. This is a condom that has 2 rings, and one goes up inside the vagina and will like go up against the cervix, and the other ring will still hang out. So this is somebody who has a vagina and wants to use this. It gives them more power. They know that it's not going to be stealth taken off. These are not super popular because, can I be vulgar?
Yeah.
Yeah. So some people describe it as being like fucking a shopping bag. And so it's not super popular. That's my client's quote. So this is an internal condom. This is an external condom. Somebody who has a vagina may not identify as female. So that, I believe, is very important. So everybody knows. And when I'm handing out harm reduction supplies, oh yeah, can I get a 20 bag? Sure. You want some cookers with that? Yes, please. You want some pipes? Okay. You want the push sticks and screens? Yes, of course. Would you like some condoms too? I ask every single person, no matter how old they are, no matter what they look like, would you like some condoms? Because there is stigma, there is embarrassment. They need me to go that 90% so that they only have to go the 10%. Like, so if I make the active offer, there's way higher uptake. And if we just gave out thousands and thousands and thousands of these or millions, whatever, like the needles, maybe rates of syphilis and HIV would go down because then everybody would have access to this. So there's that, internal and external condoms. There's lube. Lube is very important. Some people who like do party and play, they might use methamphetamine and they might get very horny, have sex with a lot of people, maybe for a couple days. So lube, things can get pretty raw and chafed. So we also give out lube. And then we've also got dental dams. So you might be, what's a dental dam? This is also fun because people don't really know what these are. Like they're like, what is that? And I'm like, well, it also is a barrier protection similar to condoms. So if you like are into eating ass or eating pussy, like you could put this like right across there and you'll still protect yourself. So this is a very thin sheet of plastic so that you can go to town and you won't get any germs, bacteria, viruses, or anything like that. And I will talk like that with my clients because then they start giggling, they start laughing, they're interested. Like, so I think it's great. I get to spend like sometimes an hour with my clients, getting to know them, talking about what they need, and where else in healthcare do you get to be with your clients that much, do that much education, provide them whatever they want, and really get to connect and get to know them. So that is a pretty quick hands-on harm reduction demonstration. Now, I want to just quickly end with these two. I'm not going to get super into them because, so you might have heard of this so-called meth crisis. Is there a meth crisis? I don't think so. I believe it is a poverty crisis. It is a colonialism crisis. It's a mental health crisis. It's a homelessness crisis. These are the root issues here. The meth use is a symptom. So if it's not methamphetamine, it'd be down. If it's not down, it'd be solvents. If it's not solvents, it'd be alcohol. If it's not alcohol, it'd be whatever. So like when I fully believe blaming the substance and blaming the person who uses the substance is far too simplistic. So what are the actual root causes? They're much harder to address. But that I am not going to say we have a meth crisis. Yes, there is lots of meth on the streets. Sure. But why are people using it? It's a trauma crisis. That's what's going on. How did we get to this point? And then there's also the second bullet point. There is a toxic drug supply currently right now due to prohibition. And what I mean by that is that these drugs are illegal. So the people making them make the most concentrated form possible because it's way easier to distribute that. Back in the 1930s, the same thing happened with alcohol. Alcohol is illegal, so instead of drinking beer, people now have like very distilled hard liquor. And that's like, it takes up a small space. It's way easier to transport. That same thing is happening with our drug supply. You've got fentanyl, carfentanil, and research chemical benzodiazepines because they're active in such tiny quantities You can have one bag that is 1,000 doses. But it's toxic. I don't say it's potent, I don't say it's strong, it's pretty well toxic. And if that, I hope that's not stigmatizing. It's kind of the truth. These are chemicals that are used to sedate humans, like animals way larger than humans. So to counter that, we might need some safe supply or legalization. And I'm gonna end with, I could literally talk with you for the whole rest of the evening. We could talk about supervised consumption sites, overdose prevention sites, the difference between what those are, the safer washrooms that exist, ones that street connections. I could do a whole hour-long Narcan and naloxone training with you. We could, well, actually, we talked about the drug checking methods a little bit, but we could get into real depth. I talked a little bit about vein care and safer injection practices, but that's a whole thing of its own. We could talk about psychedelic medicine. We could talk about illegal drugs. I know quite a bit about illegal drugs. It's part of being with Project Safe Audience. And I'm very passionate about explaining the difference between sex, gender, and sexuality and how they are actually three separate, even though they're related, things. So pretty much, thank you for having me. This has been a joy. Are there any other questions or anything?
Well, actually, why do, hardly anybody, give out screens?
Why is hardly anybody doing
Yeah,
screens?
is it just a money thing?
I think so, yeah. Like, because we even got rid of them for a while before weed was legal. And we were like, oh, people are just using them for weed, and it's not really reducing any harms. But then we listened to our clients and they're like, no, we want the screens. So we brought them back. And so that's a good thing. And I don't know if our partner agencies are able to order them or not. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, like through us. But they should be allowed to, So, yeah. Any other questions or comments, feelings to express? Here we
Do
go.
we get to keep these?
Yes, yeah, if you want to keep the stuff, it's totally yours. You absolutely. Right.
Maddie, is there any question online? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Joe. It was amazing. I enjoyed so much. I learned so much. I'm pretty sure people here and people online enjoyed so much. I love that you brought this stuff and that you taught us how to use it and what they are for. Thanks everyone. Have a lovely evening and see you in 15 days.